Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel. I want to thank you all. Thank you for coming here to support us, the network, the efforts we're taking to just, I don't know, to expel stupidity from the classroom. Is that how we want to refer to this? To get rid of the bad eggs? There are so many ways to describe what's going on. It's disgusting. Woo! But I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for sharing these videos with others. If you're on YouTube, you can easily share text, email, carrier pigeon, smoke signal. Share the URL, the email or website address. We have to continue to get the word out. It is having an effect. We'll get to that later in the monologue here as we see what's going on around the world. People are saying enough of this bullshit. In fact, I have an incredible number, folks, an incredible number of contacts throughout the, shall we say, business world. And one of them today let me know that he was like, you know what? I work with a major corporation, a major military industrial defense corporation, and they can just basically FJB. I think the phrase he used was eat a dick. Now, what's important to note here is that people are sick to hear with it. They're willing to walk away from business, jobs, from their former lives where tyranny is concerned. And what this company was trying to do was force his company to comply. And this coming, folks, after, get this company still continued to push the bullshit mandate after the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals said it's unconstitutional, and even after OSHA suspended its unconstitutional mandate. Now, and they still wouldn't. So he just said, basically, you know what? I smell a rat. I smell some Democrats. Fuck you, major military industrial complex corporation. I don't need your business. And it was not a small or insignificant dollar figure. People are like, you know what? I don't got to do it. I don't need you. I don't want it. Eat a dick. Now, continuing along this vein of not proper insults, but rather the news, OSHA today has suspended its attempts to unconstitutionally enforce the fuck Joe Biden mandate. The court ruling, really? Pow! You mean they're going to suspend their attempt to force people to do something that is unconstitutional? Yeah, because the Fifth Circuit Court said it's unconstitutional. So OSHA, after that, took a day to go, well, I guess we'll suspend our efforts. How about this? How about OSHA and any other bureaucracy? You have the right and the duty to question everything that comes across your desk to see whether or not it's a lawful order. If it is unlawful, that is to say unconstitutional, because the Constitution is the law of the land. Therefore, anything that violates it is unlawful. And you're not allowed to say, I'm just doing my duty, when you force someone to do something unlawful or unlawfully enforce something. Yeah, you bet OSHA is going to back the fuck up, and they should. And they should have never done this in the first place. OSHA and every other federal, state, local government agency should say, no way, this is unconstitutional. We're not enforcing it. They should have their own little interpretive mind working that says, no, I'm not going to force people to do something against their will. It is a voluntary move. So how are we going to mandate something? And this whole idea of, well, it's not mandatory. We're just going to take away all of your rights until you comply with us. We're not forcing you to do shit. We're just going to make your life a living hell by punishing you. The two don't jive. You can't say, well, it's not really mandatory. It's just you won't be able to go outside, go to the store, have a job, travel anywhere, exercise any of your God-given rights. Folks, I am fucking livid with these people. It was a bad day all the way around. And this, right, this is good news that I'm giving you, but I'm pissed off about it because it is transparent. The government, Washington, D.C., is violating our rights. They fucking know it, and they won't back off until they're forced. Now, coming forward in the news a little bit, guess what? They have kind of like a bingo hidden ball drawing to see which court, which federal district court gets to hear the appeals case over the fuck Joe Biden president trying to ram this unconstitutional shit down our throats. Well, it's going to the 6th U.S. District Court of Appeals. I believe that's in Cincinnati. It's in the great state of Ohio, if I read the article correctly, and I know I did. And it is presumptively conservative, which means this will get shoved on to who? It's not a foregone conclusion that they'll rule it's unconstitutional, but any thinking human being can see that. This is my problem with the law, the legislators, the president, and the court system from the very top to the very fucking bottom. Why can't they all understand the same thing? These are simple principles. The government is in charge of national defense. The government is in charge of printing money. The government, federal government that is in charge of very, very little. So how is it we have this bloated, oversized, fucking leviathan of a bureaucracy, from law enforcement to what flavor toothpaste you can have in the morning? Who the fuck do these people think they are? Department of Education? I don't remember reading about that in the Constitution, yet there it is. OSHA, back the fuck up. Still, I think Florida should tell them, hey, guess what? Get the fuck out of our state. And then I think maybe my state would follow suit if Florida continues those moves. I sure hope so, folks. I really do. But wait, there's more. According to a Zero Hedge article, an FBI whistleblower has revealed that the Gigi Biden Department of Justice activated the Counterterrorism Division against, not against Antifa. No, they activated the Counterterrorism Division against, not Black Lives Matter. No, not them. Even though those two organizations were responsible for billions of dollars of damage, loss of life, loss of property, looting, rioting, arson, murder, assault, mayhem. The FBI, the Biden Department of Justice didn't activate their Counterterrorism Division against all of the illegal immigrants that are here. They didn't activate the Counterterrorism Division against all of the unvetted, untested, potential Taliban Afghanis who were flown in under cover of darkness, under emergency circumstances created by the Biden administration, by the way. No. They're not being, they don't have the Counterterrorism Division activated against them. It's activated against parents. That's right, folks, parents. The Biden Department of Justice has activated the Counterterrorism Division against parents for protesting all of the bullshit being taught to their children in schools. Once again, the federal government and schools. Schools are a neighborhood thing. Federal government is in D.C. What the fuck does that have to do with schools? D.C., that is. Schools are local. Schools have boards elected by the parents, and the parents have rights and control over that school board. It's not, folks, a for-profit corporation. It's not a private school. They're public. Enough said. Let's go, Brandon, right? 120,000%. Just let's go. And by the way, I wanted to let you know that one of the January 6th protesters goes by the nickname Q Shaman, who I still think was a plant, sentenced to 41 months in prison 41 months, folks. That's 3 years and 5 months. He's been sentenced to 3 years and 5 months in prison for a nonviolent offense. He was allowed inside the U.S. Capitol by police. Folks, remember that whole thing about Saul Alinsky, the radical socialist, fascist, radical socialist? His book was called Rules for Radicals. Well, folks, the rules for radicals, those work for communists and fascists. But for normal, patriotic, law-abiding taxpayers, folks, avoid all federal and imperial entanglements, because the rules for non-radicals, you see what happens. The radical rules get applied to the non-radicals, and the non-radical rules get applied against the radicals, right? In other words, BLM and Antifa get treated with kid gloves like they're actual peaceful protesters, while peaceful protesters get treated like radical, violent terrorists. Folks, the war is on. Are you prepared? Do you have food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense, and a plan? Do you understand what's going on? Right? The war is on. Info war? Yes. PSYOP? Yes. Legal war? Yes. Social war? Yes. Medical war? Yes. Educational war? Yes. Cultural war? Yes. A constitutional war? Yes. Will it become kinetic? A high volume exchange of ideas? Yes. When? There's no telling, folks, but stay prepared. It's incredible what is going on. Unbelievable. Unfucking believable, folks. This is how it works. This is how it works. Surprise, surprise. Democrats in the state of Virginia are demanding recounts because they don't want to see Republicans have power in the state house. Is YouTube, is Google, is Twitter, is Facebook going to censor Democrats who say that the 2022 election, or I'm sorry, the 2021 election was stolen in Virginia? Are they going to say, hey, no, you don't get to question the authorities? Yeah, fat fucking chance, right? This is our country, folks. This is how far it's gone. This is how far it's gone. Get your questions into Jolene. I get the first half hour. You guys get the second half hour. We're going to get the whole hour in, folks. We'll get the whole hour in. Again, I do my monologue. You guys get to ask questions in the Q&A. Get your questions in to Jolene. You can get them in, folks, 24/7. Just post them at Patreon or wherever Jolene tells you to post them. Post them, get them up, and we'll talk about them, folks. By the way, monkeypox infection was confirmed in Maryland because a resident recently returned from Nigeria and brought monkeypox. You know what? I bet there's some medication out there that'll treat that like that. But maybe we should wait for the proper scientific authorities, like Dr. Doom, to tell us how to treat it. All right, folks. I got this to say about Joe. Joe, you're 100% correct. Joe, you're correct, man. And I'm not talking about Joe Biden, though. Here's the quote. Quote, "This is cult shit. We're in a cult. This information is not based on reality." Folks, Joe Rogan, who is 10 times the audience, one little man, well, him and his buds, doing his podcast is 10 times as powerful as CNN. And what he's saying is cult bullshit. Cult is the media's presentation of the Kyle Rittenhouse case. His commentary is the mainstream media is playing the Kyle Rittenhouse case according to their cult-like belief systems. Hey, Joe, if they're cult-like with Kyle, they're cult-like with all Second Amendment. They're cult-like with the First Amendment. They're cult-like with the 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, 10th Amendments. They're cult-like with science, with culture, with the military. You can't just be partially in a fucking crazed, retarded cult. I love it when people say, oh man, you preppers, you guys are part of a cult. Oh, really? Let's see, I pay my taxes, obey the law. I'm not a criminal. I follow, right, the rules, a moral, ethical code. I don't hurt anybody. I don't steal anything from anyone. I don't tell anyone what to do and boss them and push them around. Model citizen. That's what the preppers I know are. They're good, decent, hardworking, red-blooded, traditional Americans. We're not a cult, folks. The Democrats are. Every stinking, steaming pile of shit Democrat you see is a member of a cult. Thank you, Joe. You got that one A-OK, man. And I got a post for Patreon. Again, folks, you right here listening to this live right now, you're on Patreon, and we put up some devastating links having to do with Cerveza and other news items around the world. Take advantage of it. We have a lot of people out there digging, folks, digging, searching, and looking. Thank you, Fuzz. Thank you, Skylight. Thank you, Bonnie Blue. Thank you, so many of you. Oh, and thank you, Dr. John. He put this up. He found this stuff, folks. Government website. Political orientation are correlated with brain structure. You wonder why they're trying to alter us through genetic modification? Brain structure in young adults correlates with political orientation. In other words, folks, if they can use special DNA technology to change immune systems, how much you want to bet they can rewire a brain politically with the same shit if they introduce it into young, developing minds? Hello, children. Hello, children. Wild conspiracy theory? Of course it is. It came out of my mouth. I came up with that all by myself, right here from the Prepared Mind bunker. I said, you know what? If they can change anything with gene therapy, why can't they rewire, create paths and pathways in the brain that are more conductive for communist fucking thought, right? If they can give you a drug that makes you a pacifist, weak, effeminate, scared, apparently that's closing off pathways to the mind that have to do with fight or flight response. Shuts some down, opens others up, right? If they can control it, folks, with some drugs, they can definitely change shit with gene therapy. Wake the fuck up. Yeah, science fiction, but science fiction meet reality. Now, speaking of that, science fiction and reality, got a Patreon post I can't share with you, but I'll tell you this. A Texas doctor has resigned because the hospital suspended her and then investigated her for warning about taking something that she didn't think they should take. And she was promoting something the mainstream media doesn't want me to talk about. Was that right? Was that wrong? Well, she's a doctor, not me. I'm not a doctor. None of this happened to me. I'm not telling you what to believe or think. I'm just letting you know a Texas doctor basically said, you know what, fuck you. Resigns because they wanted to investigate her for practicing medicine and acting well within her right and her authority and her license. Imagine this. You're driving down the road at 55 and you get pulled over and investigated by the police for driving 55, and you say, look, the speed limit is 55. Why am I being pulled over for doing 55 when the speed limit is 55? I'm allowed to go 55. My license says I can go 55 because I have a license. It's precisely what's happening to the doctors out there, folks. They're like, you know what? I'm allowed to practice medicine. Practicing medicine includes promoting the use of medicines that work. Why the fuck are you investigating me and wasting my time? Never mind. Let's go, Brandon. Eat a dick. Love it. Americans are saying, fuck you. And the more I hear this, folks, the more I hear Americans taking this attitude, the more I like it. Because you can't convince these leftist idiots otherwise. You're not going to be able to stop them. You're not going to be able to reverse course with these fucking idiots. They're lost causes. Get this, folks. Steve Bannon, who used to work for President Trump in the administration, he has filed a not guilty plea to the Biden regime over his contempt of Congress charges. Contempt of Congress? Hey, folks, never mind Bannon, who is nobody now. He's like me, only bigger, of course, but both fat and older and a bigger audience. Anyways, never mind Bannon. How about this? For contempt. How about criminal contempt? How about James Comey, Ruby Rod Rosenstein, Peter Strzok, Christopher Wray, all FBI liars. All FBI who have either lied, obstructed. I mean, what? Lying, refusing to comply with subpoenas to appear, refusing to comply with subpoenas to provide information and documentation. How about refusing to comply with subpoenas to perform as instructed or answer the fucking questions? Oh, Eric Holder, anyone? How about those FBI and Department of Justice people? How about going after them for contempt, criminal contempt of Congress? But let's attack lowly Steve Bannon. 'Cause Orange Man bad. That's right, folks. Republicans are bad. You're bad. Parents are domestic terrorists and need, right, the counterterrorism division turn loose on them. The Democrat fascist scumbags are the good guys because CNN says so, folks. And 50 years of CIA and FBI infiltration into the mainstream media has paid off. Well done, you bunch of evil fucks. Are you prepared, folks? America, I'm talking to you preppers now. Are you prepared? Have you seen enough? Have you heard enough? Just this one little monologue, 30-minute section. I have said more about fucked up shit and things that need to be fixed in this country than the mainstream media has done in my lifetime. Well, except when complaining about Trump. But those weren't really legitimate complaints. That was a bunch of partisan hackitude. Now, let us turn our attention to the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. It's a bit chaotic, folks, because the prosecution went on the offense. The defense went on the offense over the prosecution withholding evidence. What am I talking about? Well, apparently they had some high definition footage or some good quality footage that, well, they gave the shit to the defense, which means that interfered. It impeded them making decisions about how to use the material in their defense. But the prosecution, that is the government lawyers, came out after the defense rested and jury deliberations started. It came out afterwards that, oh yeah, sorry about that. The footage you got was substandard, lower quality. Well, the defense for Kyle, who I think have acted very slipshod. I don't think they put up a very good defense at all. I really don't. They actually came out, though, and said, we want a motion for mistrial. And the judge casually flipped it aside and said, well, let's just see if they convict him first. Okay. So basically, you couldn't ask for a mistrial until after the jury anyways, or at this point, until after the verdict. How about this? How about if you're going to fucking swing for the fence, if you're going to try and kick a field goal from 80 yards, might as well fucking kick big, right? If you've got a free shot at the end zone, that is to acquit or get everything thrown out, they should have asked for a mistrial with prejudice. He asked for one. He goes, without prejudice, Your Honor, it's just a big fuck up. We think we need a whole new trial. It's like, no, pal, it's a lot bigger than that, right? And not only did the fucking prosecution provide them with substandard evidence, in other words, they lied in their what? Discovery. That is giving the defense all of the prosecutorial information. And the judge and the fucking prosecutor are arguing about, well, you know, this is a new thing in the area of jurisprudence. No, it's not. We've had computer technology of this caliber and quality for 25 years. Well, I didn't know that the video was compressed. Fuck you, you fat liar. You could see these prosecutors lying through their teeth. They were making a bullshit excuse after bullshit excuse. You don't have to be, folks, a lie detector machine to detect lying. Unbelievable. And the guy with his bullshit stuff, he rattled and prattled on for 10 fucking minutes and then goes, I'm going to withdraw all that, Your Honor. That's the fucking government lawyers, right? He continued to lie and lie and lie about the nature of the evidence. This is what we can expect, folks. This is what you can expect if you go to trial. You're going to have attorneys for the government lying about you, lying to the jury, lying to the judge, lying to your lawyers. You feel like being railroaded by an organization like the FBI or any state Department of Justice organization? You feel like being arrested and saying, well, no, it's cool. You're not supposed to fight back. Allow yourself to be arrested. And then see how long it takes to get a fucking trial. And then when you finally get to trial, after you waive your right to a speedy trial and you get to a trial, then you can see how the judge and the prosecutors fucking suck. They don't know their ass from the hole in the ground. They think the Constitution, right, it happens when you eat too much cheese. Well, I'm all constituted here. Huh? I need some Pepto. It's about their mentality. That's the country we're in now, folks. Stupidopia, idiocracy. That is not the world that I live in. The world I live in holds me accountable 100%. The world I live in says if you fuck up, if you make a mistake, if you don't make the right decision, you'll lose, and you lose. You lose money, you lose jobs, you lose friends, you lose everything when you fuck up, when you make a mistake. You lose jobs, you lose opportunities, you lose everything. Not so with the fucking government, folks. They can lose evidence. They can lose their fucking minds and say the stupidest shit, and there's no consequences for them. They still have their state job with their state fucking retirement or their federal job with their federal retirements. Meanwhile, Steve Bannon, basically a fucking nobody except a name, gets hauled into court over contempt of fucking Congress. I tell you what, I've got contempt for Congress too. Woo! Here's another one. Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma, guess what? They lose National Guard status. You bet. They're going to be called a state militia instead. You know what I say? Good. That's all they need is a state militia. This is breaking news. A defense official today reportedly said if the Oklahoma National Guard doesn't comply with the Cerveza bug mandates, they will no longer be, quote, maintaining national recognition. Thus, the state will no longer have a National Guard, but rather a militia. That's what the Voice of America Pentagon correspondent reported. I tell you what, good. A Pentagon status symbol is not worth risking lives for an evil, cock-smoking turd who has been pushing his political agenda ahead of real science. Folks, states need and should only need a militia. The National Guard, aka Pentagon-approved District of Columbia status, right? Who wants that? Who would want to be associated with that pile of shit? They don't even know what their fucking genders are in the Pentagon anymore. Well, I'm binary. I'm non-binary. I don't know what I am. I checked in the bathroom and I still don't know. That's the military in the Pentagon today. Go ahead, smart bomb me. Try it. The worst they can do, folks, is kill me. But they're not going to convince me ever that they haven't lost their fucking minds and that they aren't a bunch of evil idiots. Every last one of these fascist, Marxist scum. Tell you, folks, wake up, get mad, and take action. only lawful, non-dangerous, non-harmful, right? We don't glorify or glamorize violence now, do we? Well, the government sure does, because they love to send FBI agents, 30 of them armed, rushing in to arrest in the wee hours of the morning. Who? That's right, an old man named Roger Stone and his cancer-stricken wife, while CNN dutifully films it. That's the government, folks. They glorify violence. They glamorize it as long as it promotes the state's story. Unfucking believable. And I want to finish with this, and then we'll get to your stuff, folks. I got two more quick ones for you. Number one, fuck Ireland government. Ireland has imposed midnight curfew and boosters for life. And they credit the success of their program for not being in a current national lockdown, folks. So apparently the absence of an enemy, in this case, cerveza bug, the absence of an enemy proves all of their decisions, all of Ireland's government decisions were 100% spot on. Spot on. Spot on? They were spot on because there's no enemy. So boosters for life, I mean, that's how you come to a conclusion? Morons in Ireland's government. Now let's go around the world and to the bottom of the world, to Australia. Folks, it's getting closer. The gallows are being built, folks. Mock guillotines and mock gallows. You know, a gallows is a thing where they hang a rope from in a noose. The form of a noose does appear on a gallows. A noose anywhere else is not a noose. It's a rope. It's a handle. Choke knot. A noose is for hanging people on a gallows. Anyways, this should be the penalty for treason by government officials. And the people of Australia are building mock gallows and mock guillotines and saying death for treason and death for the murder of their people. And it is death by hanging and death by guillotine for violating their rights. The people in Australia are getting pissed off. Now, the government, that is legislators and even a Supreme Court justice or a former Supreme Court justice in Australia, says this is very improper. It's very improper to have this sort of political speech. Now, they haven't hung anyone. They haven't cut anyone's head off. They're not calling for violence. They're saying this is what treason gets. Well, it's not stopping the government of Australia. So the government of Australia is moving this way. The people are saying no more treason, no more violating our rights. There will be conflict, folks, in Australia. It's going to get worse. They're passing some awful Orwellian bullshit 1984 tyrannical authoritarian laws in Australia. I'm not going to live under it, folks. I'm not in Australia, thankfully, but I'm not going to live under it. And apparently neither will they. It is coming. Are you prepared? Let's do this. Let's get to your questions.
Are you ready?
All right. That's it, huh? Not a bad day. That's just one day, folks. One day. One day. One day. I mean, that half hour that I just put in, that used to be what an entire year's worth of crazy, radical, wacky bullshit. And then it got worse, and I was like, well, that's 1 month. They crammed a whole year into 1 month. Holy cow. And then it was, I can't believe all that happened in a week, right? What I just did for half an hour would have been like the insane weekly wrap up from 3-4 years ago. Now we get it in just a matter of 6 fucking hours. Since I created the last broadcast till now, 6 fucking hours, all of that shit just happened. Whew, Sally Sue says this: there was no international ruling body at the time of the French Revolution. Here we go. If citizens were to do now as they did then, what international repercussions would they have to look forward to? None, right? There is none. There is no United Nations organization to sit around and say, hey, Mr. King Louis, you need to back off. As if King Louis would have listened. He was a fucking tyrant. There was no World Court or Hague back in the 1700s that would have gone to King Louis in France or King George in England and said, you guys, you're violating the human rights of those people. We think you should stop. And those tyrants would go, you know what? You're right. I think we'll stop. There is no international organization, folks. The only time the people guarantee their own freedom is when they take action. There's no guarantee that individuals won't die. To the contrary, many individuals do. The only guarantee or insurance, the only guarantee or assurance that we will be free is only if and only if you, pointing at you right there. That's right, you and me and the rest of us collectively look around, collectively because it takes that much power, and say, we've had enough of this shit. That's why I've said this is going to come to partisan conflict. It's going to come down to individuals making kinetic arguments. It's going to come down to that. It has to, because tyrants never quit. Whether or not there's an international organization that has heard a complaint from the people, ruled on it, and gone back to that tyrant. Tyrants don't give a fuck. King Louis didn't. King George didn't. Chairman Mao didn't give a fuck. Stalin didn't give a fuck. Trotsky didn't give a fuck. Che Guevara didn't give a fuck. Lenin didn't give a fuck. No. And neither did Hitler, Goering, Himmler, or anyone else of a tyrannical nature ever give a fuck. They just did what they wanted and killed people. That's how they rolled. That's it. That's how they rolled. The only way to stop them, folks, is to build a gallows, build a guillotine. The only way to stop a tyrant is to remove them not only from power, but remove their ability to act out towards anyone else. Now, am I promoting the idea of killing politicians? No. Am I inciting violence? No. Do I want anyone to do the things I just said? No, I do not. I'm talking about the practical reality of the universe. Tyrants never stop. It's not up to me, folks. I'm just one guy. But I'll tell you what, you'll know. You'll know when it's time. You will know when it's time. You know that feeling you had before January 6th? Go back before January 6th, before the FBI operation was kicked off, before the FBI informants made it to Washington, D.C. Remember that feeling of, yeah, we're going to go there and we're going to tell them to stuff it and support the president. We're going to do that thing, right? And you felt this tremendous surge in energy and desire to go to that place, Washington, D.C., which at one point we felt was neutral ground or free ground belonging to the people. We thought, I'll go there and we'll make a difference. Right? You'll know when people are taking action. You're like, oh, I sure wish I could be there. That's when you'll know what's happening. It's scary times though, folks, and there's no guarantee. The empire strikes back, right? Imperial entanglements will ensue. And yeah, I'm really talking about Star Wars. Woo! I tell you. Sally Sue says, what I meant was, would the UN step in if seeing citizens violently overthrowing their government? Oh, here we are. Would the United Nations and other nations around the world say, hey, you bad American citizens, how dare you stop those tyrants? I mean, the lawful government of the United States Corporation. I don't know what they're going to do. That's a great question. I would be very suspicious. Now, I think that if the people of the United States of America, that is, the people, took up arms and went to several state capitals and even fell upon DC en masse, armed, I think it would take months for the United Nations to figure out what they need to do, because they're a bunch of brain dead, they're testicular free, and they're morons. You ever listen to someone from the UN talk? You ever listen to the UN troops and bureaucrats talk? They're a bunch of fucking eggheads, in my opinion. Yeah, I'm sure they'd want to do something, but they really are impotent folks, in my opinion. Still, they would look over here and go, oh my God, America's a mess. Right? America is a mess. Will the military fire on Americans who are so fed up that they revolt? Again, hypothetical question, hypothetical only, not implying, not recommending anything happens in Washington, D.C. How can you control Washington, D.C. if you can't even control your own state? How can you control your own state if you can't even control your own county or city? See, this multiple jurisdictional crossover bullshit really does speak to us on many levels, doesn't it? You got to get a control of your own city before you can criticize and go after the state. Or do you think that once you take over the state capital, all the cities within the state will come under control? Well, here's where I'll point to states like Texas and Florida, where the government of Florida and the government of Texas says to everyone in the state, thou shalt not put masks on children. And within the state, certain jurisdictions say, well, fuck you, governor. We don't like the law. We only like our own emergency mandates. And so we're going to continue to make kids wear masks anyway. So you have to control the state as well as the local areas. But let's just assume that some radical, crazy group of people thinks they're going to take back Washington, D.C. Primarily, it's going to be done by people who live in close proximity to D.C. Because I don't think a lot of them will come from California or Hawaii or Alaska or Washington State to get to Washington, D.C. to mount an offensive against the unconstitutional, unbridled socialists that they have become. But the battle is coming, folks. Orlando says, John, please elaborate on this. Would love your input on this quote from R. Buckminster Fuller. He was the inventor of the geodesic dome. If you've ever seen a dome house, that was the Buckminster Fuller guy. He says, quote, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Now, Mr. Buckminster Fuller, right, the creator of the geodesic dome, it was a bit of a, he was an interesting cat, to say the least. He was a bit, in my opinion, he probably had a little bit of too much mind-altering drugs. Certainly, he was philosophical in nature. He liked his math. Math was one of his things he really liked. I've worked on a few domes in my life. But his quote, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. That was done in the American Revolution. The existing model at that time was centralized government under King George. The model was the government takes people from all through the empire, puts them in a centralized military, and then attacks any problems with centralized military. The existing model at the time, the American Revolution, was the king is always right and the people are always wrong. That was defeated, right, by creating a new reality, a new model, in Buckminster Fuller's words, that would make the existing model obsolete. So how did Americans make the existing model obsolete? Well, the existing military model, as described, taking people from the British Empire, putting them in their army, and then centralized control and attack. Well, they combated and defeated that model by guerrilla warfare, guerrilla tactics, as well as colonial military tactics. The Americans used this. They created their own military model. They had a confederation, a loose federation, right? Confederation, federation, federati, it's just a word. It was a group of states called the colonies. They were all independent states, independent of one another, but they were unified in a belief that they should be free. The existing model at that time was the empire owns everybody and everything. The new model was we're independent and we should have local control over what we believe, and then we can unify to combat enemies. So the new model was, right, small republics versus giant empire. The existing reality at that time, one second. Oh, man. All right, past. The existing model at that time was government knows better. The king is almighty. God's representative on earth, you will obey. Tyrannical government doesn't have to tolerate anything the people have to say. That was the existing model. The new model that made it obsolete was the belief that we are all independent beings with God-given rights that don't require the existence or permission of a king to exist. And it was a combination of all of these things, all of these new ideas, concepts about freedom and liberty, about authority, that defeated King George. So this idea that Buckminster Fuller had is this quote: you change things not by fighting the existing reality with the existing reality's beliefs, but through a new model. It still applies today because, in all truth, the federal government and the state governments have become exactly what the British Empire was. The United States government thinks it's king, right? And all of the states are kind of like the empire. And they all think that they're going to, they're part of this great empire and they run and own everything. Well, the people are rejecting that idea, that notion of federal empire. And they're starting to assert their independent state status, not a centralized top-down thing, but rather independent states make their own decisions. And within those states, the people make their own decisions for themselves. In other words, freedom is dying. But only in the world of the federal government is freedom a dying thing. With us, it is a blossoming virtue that is coming to life. The federal government sees freedom as dead. We see it as a new model. It's going to grow. Right? It is not dying, it is burgeoning, it is growing, it is blossoming. Of course, evil doesn't like things that are beautiful. Evil will try and crush, right, this blossoming, burgeoning idea and concept of freedom. And the trees, the bushes, the grasses, right, of liberty are always watered with the blood of tyrants and patriots. Just to throw a little Thomas Jefferson quote in there, meaning there's going to be a lot of bloodshed, and it is going to be the thing that nurtures this new model, whatever comes of it. The new model, folks, we're not trying to use federal power to go defeat federal power. Right? There's not going to be a confederation or a federation or a union of free states that says, you know what, we're going to take over using our centralized power and attack the centralized power of DC. That would be using their model to fight their model, right? Existing realities fighting. That's what we have in the world with the US facing off against Russia, facing off against China, facing off against Australia, facing off against Taiwan. They're all fighting fire with fire. in order to defeat their unwholesome Leviathan, we have to create our own model that is completely different from it. Something that can be supported, something that makes sense. And that is a new model of freedom, right? Like a phoenix rising from the ashes to be reborn once again. Freedom is dying right now. And fire is destructive, and fire is consumptive. And this concept and idea of the phoenix is an interesting way to illustrate the notion that, yeah, freedom is burning right now. Right now, our freedoms are being destroyed. Washington is proclaiming you have no fucking freedoms. None. Screw your freedoms, right? And according to Fauci, you know, there comes a time when you have to give up your right to make personal decisions, right? Freedom dying again. But the phoenix burns up, very hot, very bright. But out of those ashes comes a new phoenix, a new freedom, a new nation. Understand that that is all very, very possible. The fire has started, folks. We got S. Thompson says, John, how many restrooms are along the side of a liberal highway? It depends whether or not it's a transit corridor. Well, you said depends there, and I thought that was going to be a Biden joke. Ungrateful peasant checks in. Sorry, I got to reel my mind back in. I was kind of out there in the world of philosophy for a little bit. Got to reel it back in and understand the reality you're dealing with. Okay, we got Ungrateful Peasant. He says, we're going to have to act as Americans and not global citizens to fix this shit. There's no going back anymore. The cult of wokeness has gone on too long. I think what you had to say there is it's reflective. It's consistent. It's concurrent with some of the thoughts I was having. How can we fix the world when we can't even fix our own country? How can we fix our country if we can't fix our own state? It all comes down to local. What can you do locally, right? What can an individual, who do they have more influence over? Does an individual have influence over a nation or over the people around them? Well, over the people around us. And so say the 100 people around me right now, well, of course, out on the street and around, those people, if there were 100 of us up there chanting the same thing, would only influence, again, a bigger circle around us. The idea of top-down authority, the model of the king, right? And centralized power from the top coming down and encompassing everything under his will, or, if you will, her will, whoever this monarch is. Doesn't work really well. I mean, it works for command and control, but it doesn't work to serve the people. It doesn't work to serve the people. Yeah, we're not going to be able to fix the world from the United States here, folks. We're going to have to work to fix our individual states. And the woke crowd is the same as the globalist crowd, is the same as the educational crowd. It's the same as the military and the Pentagon crowd. They're all doing one thing right now, and that is destroying America, setting it on fire. And they're hoping the model that exists when it's all done is a new top-down, centralized command and control power structure that has no United States Constitution. That's what they're shooting for. They have successfully infiltrated the government, all branches and the bureaucracy at all levels, federal, state, and local. They have successfully done that to the point that they can pull this coup d'etat. They've gone to war over decades and decades using essentially Saul Alinsky, the Karl Marx mandates and communist infiltration and philosophy to get this far. But really what they're trying to do, folks, is create, how do we put this? They're trying to create the Holy Roman Empire, where there is a named Caesar who is a God incarnate, at least until he dies. And they want Roman civil law, aka fascism. That's what they're shooting for. They want to replace one model, right? They have bent and twisted the Constitution to create a fascist model. And they want to absolutely destroy this model and then introduce their own fascist superstate model that includes the global thing. It's a mess, folks. In order for us to win, to be successful, to be free, we've got a big fight ahead of us. Big fight ahead of us. Unbelievable what's coming. All right, we got Jenny Jen checking in. Jen, I hope you had a wonderful trip. I hope you enjoyed seeing your friends. I know that you didn't get to visit with one friend that you were meaning to see, and I'm hoping that can be amended soon. But I hear you from way out in California there. Jenny Jen is checking in with us on the Prepared Mind Network. And she has this to say: John, to withhold relevant discovery with intent is to defraud the defendant. A true and just trial by a jury of his peers, and his defense should request that the prosecution or prosecuting attorney be replaced by the Attorney General, since he is unable to work within the bounds of the law. I believe Jenny Jen is taking criminal justice and knows a thing or two about law. That may, and I'm just going to speak generally, not as an argumentative or authoritative thing, but just rather, that may have worked. This idea of replacing the prosecutorial asshole known as the DA, replacing him early in the trial with someone from the state attorney general's office or some other qualified person would have been a good idea. The district attorney, the attorney general of the state, they can't watch every case, but in this instance, the case against Kyle Rittenhouse, I'm sure there were a lot of eyes and ears on this, and the state, the attorney general, the Bar Association of Wisconsin, indeed the American Bar Association, should be fucking embarrassed. Embarrassed, folks, at this prosecutorial misconduct. It is a completely prejudicial prosecution that has taken place using fraud against it. It is unbelievable, in my opinion, what has been happening. Unbelievable. Okay. There we go. Very nice. I tell you, Jenny, it is a travesty of justice. It is a miscarriage of justice. And then to argue that providing inadequate or corrupted evidence and saying that's adequate discovery is absolutely awful. To show that it was done intentionally, I think only one needs to merely look at the prosecution and listen to them lie to cover their tracks. If they said, holy cow, we made a mistake, we think that a mistrial has happened and we need to have a whole new trial, a whole new jury, right? We need a new prosecutor brought in, a whole new jury, and a retrial. You know, mistrial means retrial, but mistrial with prejudice, meaning the state, in order to make a case against someone, sought to violate their rights intentionally. It is, folks, disgusting on an intellectual level. It is unethical. It is immoral. It shows abuse by those who work for the state, who would use the power of the state to harm somebody. Now, the power of the state is supposed to be blind. You've seen Justice, Lady Justice, blindfolded, holding scales and a sword. In other words, justice is supposed to be blind. In this case, no. The state is acting prejudicially, seeking not to uphold the law that exists, but rather make a criminal out of someone who isn't, and then corrupting and withholding information that allows them to make their case while depriving another of their rights, to make them a criminal when they're not, to convince a jury with the information they provide, and to convince that jury, behold, a criminal sits before you, rather than here is a man, here's some information, you decide. Right? A prosecutor should be dispassionate, in my opinion. Meaning it's not personal. They don't have an axe to grind in this. They're just providing some information dispassionately. Well, here's what the investigation brought. Here's the information. The state says that you cannot commit these acts without it being called a crime. And then the state brings a case and charges the person with a crime. I mean, that's what being dispassionate is about. To look at the law and say, okay, there's the law, and we're going to take our attitude, a dispassionate one, and look at the evidence. Is it adequate to press charges? Right? Is there any grace that the state has that says we don't need to do this, or this is improper, or extenuating circumstances would show that this was a necessary act that was committed? Right? Is there any grace that the state possesses? Yes or no? Well, in this case, none of that stuff matters. I mean, fuck, throw the baby out with the bathwater when it comes to blind justice. This one was the fat fuck lifting up the blind, peeking at the evidence, saying, we're going to hide that, we're going to do this, we're going to lie about that. It is completely prejudicial, and it is an impassioned attack by political hacks going after Kyle Rittenhouse, knowing that the whole world is watching, and that the idea of self-defense and self-preservation and the defense of others and the protection of others is something that no person ought to be allowed to do or have. That's what this is about, folks. It's about your right to defend yourself, your family. In some states are stand your ground. Some say you must retreat. He was fucking retreating. I don't think any human being should be forced to retreat to the extent that you collapse on the ground while people attack and beat the shit out of you. And then to question it months later from the comfort of a fucking beautiful leather seat shined by their big, fat, greasy asses. And then pass judgment on a kid who was there. And then say, well, you showed up with a gun. You were looking for violence. Fuck all of you people, is how I see it. Unbelievable. Thank you, Jenny Jen, for bringing that up and keeping me on this high horse. Folks, the wings of liberty have been shredded, right? The olive branch that used to be carried by the American eagle is dried, withered, and is fit for nothing more than kindling at the feet of a phoenix. Our nation is failing. Doesn't mean all the people have failed. It means the structure is failing. We're going to have a lot more trouble. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets any better. And that is why I come to you and say, get prepared. Food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense. Get a plan together. Understand the facts. In the last video, I talked about prepping items versus prepper awareness. You're aware, folks. You know. I know. We all know. This is going to get nasty. You have to be prepared, and you need to understand people around you. Half the people out there, folks, think Rittenhouse is guilty. The other half thinks he's innocent. On whose side do you stand? And on whose side would you rather be if the finger was pointed at you? And in both cases, folks, it's the same side, the side of right and righteousness. And those who wish to destroy America, the Constitution, and our rights, they are clearly standing on the other side. There is a gulf between those who like freedom and liberty and those who are far left authoritarians and tyrants. Again, I don't have to call for action, and I'm not calling for action or violence or anything of the sort. But I will tell you, it's coming, and you need to be prepared while we can. America, the strong, the brave, the beautiful, we've got enough of our rights and liberties, and dare I say, privileges that we can still buy the items we need, including those that help with self-defense. My mother used to say, God helps those who help themselves. Right? Well, I certainly want God's help, and I'm certainly going to have to help myself in this regard. We all are. It starts with one person, folks. That person is you. Get prepared. There will be others that come around and come to you, and that you go to them, and you form bigger groups. We'll be looking to take back our cities and our states, and eventually, folks, we'll have a government that rises from the ashes. God willing, it'll be one that favors the individual and our liberties. I don't know for sure, but I have a good feeling that that's how these things work. Whew. Chance favors the prepared mind is yours. Semper Fi, folks, means always faithful. Don't give up. And Godspeed to you. I'll be back tomorrow. Wow.